All right, we're all set.
Cool.
So, welcome back to the Maryland Made Podcast, episode 3. I'm Resa Lovelace, and I will be the host for this show. I am currently the Assistant Athletic Director for Student Athlete Development. And I'm here with our featured guest, Ryan Bloomberg, and he will have a minute to introduce himself. So, Ryan, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, firstly, my name's Ryan Blumberg. I'm from Sydney, Australia. I'm a junior and a finance major here at UMD. And yeah, I lived in Sydney, Australia up until the age of 17, and then was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to go live in the United Kingdom in England, playing for the Nike Academy for 1 year, and then going on to sign a professional contract and playing for Charlton Athletic, which is a team based in London, where I played there for 18 months. And then after 18 months of being there, I kind of felt like I was a little bit stuck and I needed a new challenge. And before I decided to go to England at 17, I was originally planning to come to the US, and Maryland was actually the place that I wanted to go. And I even came on an official visit here, but couldn't pass up the opportunity of going to England. But yeah, I reached out to Sasho at the end of my 18 months at Charlton, and he was willing to take me back. And yeah, I've been here for almost 2.5 years now, and I'm loving it. And it's been a great experience so far.
That's so awesome. So I'll let you know you are our first international guest to the podcast. We're super happy to have you here because we understand and value all of our international students and the experience that y'all not only bring to the athletic space but to our campus. So I'm just pleased to be able to have this conversation with you, and even hearing your experience. It tells me a lot about this leader inside of you. Like, you have to be a leader to not only leave your home country and come here, but to do all of the things that you mentioned in your description of your journey. So Ryan, actually today you're going to get to host this podcast, and we're going to have a good conversation about why leadership education is important. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, great. So yeah, we heard in the inaugural episode of this podcast a little bit about your background, but I would like you to expound on your experience, especially knowing that you grew up in College Park and, like many of us, are a former student athlete. So yeah, please tell me a little bit about yourself, your role here at Maryland, and what your day-to-day looks like.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I did grow up here in College Park, so it's really great to be back home, and literally still living at home. I'm about 5 minutes from campus, which is awesome when you need to get there in a quick space, especially knowing the DMV traffic is heavy sometimes. So as you mentioned, former student athletes, I had an opportunity to go to Hampton University, where I did become a walk-on student athlete. So I know those trials and tribulations of the walk-on student athlete and the experience to be able to go from walk-on to scholarship athlete. So I think that gives me a different perspective when working with my current student athletes. During my time there, I studied sports management, and then went on to Old Dominion University, where I received a master's in sports administration, knowing that I really wanted to work in sports and not really knowing which space of sports I wanted to work in. I had an opportunity to do multiple internships at different Division I and Division III institutions. And a lot of it was externally focused, and knew early on that that wasn't really the path that I wanted. I felt like I wasn't creating enough change, and always in what I want to do is create change and really help people find their passion and their voice in this space. And so I had an opportunity to have a great mentor who said, "Hey, we have a new job starting here at George Mason. I think you'd be a great fit for it." And so I got an opportunity to start my career in college athletics and higher education at George Mason, and spent about 4 years there developing their programming, from career readiness to leadership to community service were kind of the things we focused on there. And then, as most adults know, we hit our ceiling in some positions. And so I was afforded the opportunity to head out to the West Coast, which was really new for me. I had not been to the West Coast outside of one trip previously. And the University of Oregon offered me a position to come out there, and again, kind of walk into a space that had a student athlete development program already existing, something that was already thriving. And so now I got to go there and put some of my touches on that, but I really got to focus on the diversity, equity, and inclusion work, which I think you all have seen has been integral into what we do with Maryland Made. And then again, just kind of hit that ceiling. And 2018 was just a rough year personally. And so I would say, hey, praying to the God I believe in, can you just get me closer to home? And here came this position really out of the blue here at the University of Maryland, and was able to come here and really start to develop what a career development program could look like, student athlete development could look like, once Mr. Barry and Mary Gossa gave us that gift. So, we've been here really building from scratch in a lot of ways. There were a few things here that we've kind of kept in place. So like the internship academy, which Tim touched on in the last episode, but really just thinking about what is the vision that we have, myself and Tim, and our Big Ten fellow, but also like, what is it that the Maryland student athletes need, right? So I think we came in and we heard from the coaches and we heard from the students, and I think originally we had multiple pillars, but then it kind of, over the last year or so, I would say, slimmed down to really focusing on three things: career readiness, leadership education, and identity development. And so I think that's where we are and where we'll probably stay for another couple of years. But again, we know the student athletes evolve. And then from a day-to-day perspective, I mean, my days look different every day. So there are some days that I'm solely focused on working with student athletes. But now in this elevated position, there are a lot of times that I'm in conversation with our leadership team and other managers to really think about how do we make our department as a whole function better, and making sure that we're also equipping our students with access to whatever it is they need.
Great. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, and so you mentioned early in our conversation, in your intro, that you decided to come to Maryland. Like, as an international student, you had the globe literally at your fingertips. Like, what was it about Maryland that drove you here?
Yeah, I actually get asked that question a lot, just because I haven't met any Australian athletes here, or students really. And it does seem like a bit of a random choice. I know there was a football player who was Australian, who played on the football team, and there was a guy that played here a few years ago on the soccer team, who was also Australian. But yeah, I guess what really drew me to Maryland was first and foremost the soccer program. When I was in high school, I decided that I thought that college would be a great fit for me, and something where I could go and continue my athletic and academic journey. And I worked with a recruiting agency in Australia, and I can't exactly remember how it worked, but we kind of found each other, me and Maryland, that is. And yeah, I came here on an official visit, and the guys took me in so well, and I had a great weekend over here, and I kind of decided pretty much on the spot that this is the place that I wanted to go. While it didn't happen immediately, just because of the sudden opportunity of going to England came up. I'm happy to be here. But yeah, I guess the soccer team first and foremost, the culture around the team, and the demand for excellence and to continue getting better is a huge thing for me. And then as well, the academic side, I'm passionate about business, and I'm in the business school here studying finance, and it's a great business school and I'm learning a lot. And it's something which I definitely want to do after my degree and in the future. In what department, I'm not sure, but yeah, I guess the school is great in both respects.
That's awesome to hear. So you aren't my first Australian student athlete, I should say. It seems like y'all are always kind of driven to having conversations with me and growing a relationship. When I was at the University of Oregon, I was really connected with one of and I feel like she was also in your same situation, the only Australian student athlete we had. But again, she was active in a lot of things, which similarly you are as well, right? Like, you jump into more. I mean, you talk about the sport and you talk about academics, but like, you're participating in SAAC, you were a part of our leadership academy. Like, what drives you to also be involved in things outside of your sport?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I came here, we had sessions with Vancho, which is one of Sasha's acquaintances, and he kind of talks about performance and how to improve your performance both on and off the field, and you kind of set goals for yourself in those sessions. And I remember it was one of my first sessions upon arriving at Maryland, and I kind of was thinking like, what do I really want to achieve while I'm here? And shock is one thing, and it's great, and it's been a huge part of my life, and it's ultimately given me the opportunities to travel around the world and be exposed to amazing opportunities. But I think as I've grown older and with the experiences that I've had, which I'm so fortunate to have had, I've started to look a little bit beyond that and really tried to live by having a great legacy wherever I am, with the people that I meet, and interact with. And I think that became a huge thing for me, to be able to really leave a positive mark, leave a meaningful mark, at Maryland and at the people that I'm connecting with on a day-to-day basis. And really, I found that there were so many awesome opportunities to get involved in off the field, and the Leadership Academy, SAAC, SAMS, the Gossip Fellows program, they're all great opportunities which we get exposed to, and we're lucky to have access to. And yeah, for me, it was kind of a no-brainer to at least give it a try. And I knew that if I was going to give it a go, there was nothing that was bad could come of it. I was only going to be able to grow and learn from it. And if it turned out that I didn't enjoy it, I didn't enjoy it, and I maybe wasted a few hours. But that hasn't been the experience that I've had at all. They've all been very beneficial to me in helping me improve as a leader, to communicate better to teammates and friends. And yeah, I definitely use some of the things that I've learned on a day-to-day basis, here in Maryland.
That's awesome. Sounds like you are really not only moving the needle for yourself, but I feel like it's a word that you can spread to your teammates and peers that are coming behind you.
Yeah, no, it's been an amazing experience, and yeah, I really encourage everyone to try and get involved in as many programs as they can. I think it's so underutilized by student athletes, and it's great that it's now kind of getting a bit more traction, and there are more activities involved. But yeah, I mean, there's really no downfall that could happen, and if it turns out you don't enjoy it, and that's fine.
Awesome.
So Maryland Made is led by 3 pillars: career readiness, identity development, and leadership education. So why was it important to have leadership education to be one of y'all's main priorities?
Yeah, I think leadership education really stemmed from a lot of things that you just talked about, right? Like being able to advocate not only for yourself, but everyone around you. There's the confidence that grows from leadership. And every day in sport, we talk about leaders. Like it's a constant reminder of like the platform that you have. And so for me, it came from a couple of ways. One, I believe leadership is important. And I think that no matter what seat you hold, you are a leader. And it looks very different depending on the circumstances you're in. 2, as I mentioned, when we first got here, one of the things we did was have a conversation with coaches, and also a conversation with student athletes. And in some of the data that we received, both of y'all said we need leadership education. And it was very interesting that there were about 4 points of alignment. And so I was appreciative to hear that y'all are both seeing it, as in the student athletes and the coaches, about why this program could be important. And so again, it's the community work. I think it's also important to have another connection to campus. So our campus does have an office of leadership education. And so we started to work with them and talk about, well, what does this look like from a campus perspective that our students can jump into? And so how can we kind of align those 2 things? And so you can start with us and kind of get your feet wet in terms of leadership. But then there's this whole office, and then we have minors in leadership education as well. So again, it's about kind of connecting the dots that you mentioned earlier, where you can go from athletics and the things we're doing into the business school and vice versa. So for me, it's a collective conversation about developing our students.
Right. Yeah, it's awesome. I know that there's so many different leadership classes and courses now being offered on campus. And I've actually ended up taking a few of those, but haven't been able to pursue a minor or a major. But yeah, I know that the opportunities are definitely there.
That's awesome.
Anyways, so during the spring of 2020, you launched the Maryland Made Leadership Academy. What was the process like in creating it?
Well, it wasn't an easy process. I would say this was probably one of the more trickier programs that I felt like we were developing because our campus does offer a lot, because we did know that we had a lot of student athletes who weren't taking leadership as a minor. And so for me, it also needed to align with all of the other programs we had going on. So you mentioned Gossip Fellows, which they were meeting twice a week when we launched this. Obviously, SAAC meets, I think at that point, we're meeting every other week in some capacity. And so we had to make sure that it fit in what we were doing from a timeline perspective, but also that it fit what you all needed as students. And so one of the things I got to do was go and sit with our Office of Leadership Education from campus. And they talked about, they had a 5-week program and they did it in the fall and the spring semester where students got to opt into these programs. They applied for it. It was 5 concurrent weeks, which means they got the education in a short soundbite, I would like to say. But it also flowed in the presence in which they did the education. And so hearing that, I was like, wow, I never thought about doing a small 5-week program because I was used to it lasting for an entire academic year or lasting for a semester. And as I got to kind of see them work through the process, it made a lot more sense for our student athletes, especially knowing that we were launching this program in the spring, which is typically heavy for us with sports. And so I said, all right, if we do 5 weeks, let's start backwards. And so if we do the last week before spring break, that means after spring break, when schedules get really hectic, you all will already be done. And it will be quick. And so it allowed us 2 weeks to kind of get you all acclimated back in the spring, 5-week program, spring break, you're done. And so it was important to kind of make sure that the timeline was right. And then secondarily thinking about, well, who do we want to put in front of you and what were the conversations we wanted to have? So in the fall of 2019, us as a staff, we did the Gallup Strengths Assessment. And I said, wow, I've done this before, but this may also be something great for our students. And now we're creating cyclical language where all of the academic staff and student athlete development know what strengths is. Some of our coaches have been through the programming. And now we're inviting you all as students into it. So now you, Ryan, can go talk to your coach or talk to your academic advisor and say, hey, I just did this awesome thing. Here are my strengths. Well, what are yours, right? Being able to have a non-sport or academic conversation. But then it was also important, again, those 4 points of alignment between the students and the coaches were communication, followership, creating change outside of sport. And I'm obviously going to forget the last one because that's where we are on a Monday, but it was really important to kind of bring those things into the fold for me. And so I was super excited that not only did we have students that wanted to jump into that program immediately, but not just 1 or 2 students. I think there were initially 15 students who applied off the bat, which I was super impressed with because again, we were still new as staff. Y'all were still getting to know us. But y'all trusted the vision and you trusted what we were going to do was going to make you better. And so we were also able to bring in, different people from campus. So again, introducing you to more than just us as the athletic staff, which I was super impressed with, not only the content, but even the conversations y'all were able to have that first year. And so again, first time we did it, this year was the second time, and under COVID, just wasn't the same because we weren't able to be in the same room. But I also saw in that first year, you all from different sports being able to now connect. And so I hope that through that, y'all have been able to stay in connection because it's, again, not that soccer to soccer conversation. It's now soccer to volleyball or soccer to football conversation, but all geared around leadership. And as you mentioned, you were one of the first people to jump into this program. So what drove you to jump into that program? And trust that we were doing this the way that you probably envisioned, or maybe you didn't have a vision.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I just saw the opportunity, and I think I've always been a leader, a bit of a natural leader in social situations, especially within my team, and have been in the past. And I just thought that this would be a great opportunity to get some outside information and further improve my leadership qualities, which I could definitely always improve on. So yeah, I applied and I knew it was a 5-week program, and I think that was appealing because I didn't want it to be something where it was going to drag on all semester, and I kind of didn't want to have to force myself or think that I'm forcing myself to go. And I think having a 5-week program and kind of knowing that, you know, I'm going to learn things quickly, while it may take time for me to be able to implement those things, but yeah, not drag on throughout the whole semester was appealing. And then, yeah, I think there were some cool topics, like you said, which were discussed: the Gallup strength assessment, leading communication, leading as it relates to change. I think these are all things which are very applicable to my life. Learning about my own strengths and weaknesses and how I can apply them in my life and in work practices and in sports. And I think leading as it relates to followership and leading and communication are, I think, the two big ones for me, especially because the importance of communicating to people is obviously vital in the workplace and in social situations and in the team. And in my experiences of playing soccer, you definitely have to know how to communicate with different players differently on the field according to their personalities, and that applies with my friends as well. And I think learning different strategies for how to pick up on cues when speaking to people, how to basically just speak differently to different people according to their needs was really cool, and emerging as a leader in that regard. And then also leading as it relates to followership, how to become a bigger leader so that others are going to follow what you're doing and follow your footsteps, being a role model for others. I think, yeah, just two cool topics that I personally really enjoyed. And I still have a book, which I actually have right in front of me, which has got my notes about each of the weeks that we discussed. And I definitely refer to it at times. And it was a valuable, fun experience where I got to interact with other people from other student athletes from different sports who I normally wouldn't typically interact with. So yeah, it was just a cool thing which I wanted to be exposed to.
Is it something that you think more people should jump into, more athletic departments should create these type of programs? Like, what would your stance be on something like that?
Yeah, I think 100%. I definitely believe that this is something which should be administered to other athletic programs across the country. And I think more people should definitely get involved. I really truly believe that there's no downfall of it. There's only going to be benefits. It really is helpful because you're getting statistics and raw data, and you're learning from other people about different leadership qualities and ideas which are really applicable to your day-to-day life. And I think, you know, even if you may think that you're not a natural leader or you're a captain of your team or something like that, you can always lead and influence others in a positive way irrespective of that. So I think that, yeah, learning from others about leadership and learning about different facets within leadership is a great thing and a great tool which can only help you in the long run.
Yeah, so I'm a pivot here and talk about leadership, right, and how that connects to a lot of the student groups that you're involved in. And so I don't think this is your first year in SAAC. I want to say this is probably your second year, in some capacity with SAAC. Maybe not your team rep, but I'm pretty aware that you showed up last year when we were in person. So you talk about being a leader, and we often look at SAAC as leaders. And so, like, again, what made you jump into that space to want to be your team's rep this year? And what are the things that you feel like this space could really thrive in?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think I definitely am a leader, and I think I have respect for my teammates, and I'm trying not to be, I guess, complacent about that. And I want to stay on top of that and continue to be a role model and continue to do the right thing by my teammates. And I felt that, not an obligation, but I felt that it was my role to step in and be one of the SAAC members for my team, because I really thought that I could provide my teammates with up-to-date and valuable information when necessary, and encourage people to speak about topics which they may not otherwise speak about. So yeah, I felt that it was a good role for me, and I think I was suited to be the SAAC representative, or one of the representatives for our team. And yeah, I think I've definitely brought up some really cool topics with the team, which we've discussed in SAAC, particularly focused on mental health, which is a topic that I'm very passionate about, as well as gratitude, which I practice and I've integrated into my life a lot, which has been really helpful for me, and kind of sharing these ideas and insights with my teammates has been awesome. And I think I've really been able to help a few people, and in any case, just increase word about all the different things that we're talking about at SAAC with my team.
That's awesome. And so I know here we've been through some changes with SAAC, and I think it'll continue to evolve. You know, when you entered into SAAC, we had changed the structure to what it was prior to us getting here. And now we're looking at changing that structure again. So we launched the applications maybe a week ago for this upcoming academic year. And a lot of students have asked us, well, why? Why have we changed the structure again? And we've changed the structure to really, again, we're listening to you all say, well, we want to talk about more things other than community service, which we know that that's really important and an integral part that you should play. But it's also about really trying to align ourselves with what campus is doing, because you are still students, but also aligning with what the initial purpose, I should say, was of SAAC. And so now, if you look at what we've put together, I think we've expanded our board, which I think now has 10 seats, 9 or 10 seats. We're not having committees anymore, which I think is going to be great, because now it's individual based, and like you can bring, you know, Ryan, what your thoughts are from your seat to the table. I'm excited about the different roles we have, from, you know, just the traditional president, but now we'll have liaisons. So there's an opportunity for representation for somebody who wants to be involved in diversity and inclusion. And that person will not only be connected to our campus, but also to the person that leads the charge within our athletic department. And so all of the liaison roles will do the same. And so we'll have somebody that represents alumni, student affairs, wellness. So you mentioned like the student athlete mental health group that you're a part of. We'll have somebody that can represent our international students, which we understand is a huge part of our population, but also a population that we really need to work with in terms of the transition piece, not only to the States, but then that conversation about what do you do when you graduate? And then there'll be somebody that's connected to our student government, which we think is also important. And then always a fabulous communications liaison, so that you all can have your own communication person, right? So we do our weekly newsletters, but maybe there could be something coming from SAAC specifically that is reaching all of the students in a student voice. So super excited about that transition, and really focusing on making sure that we're getting feedback from you all as students that we can provide to our athletic director and the leadership team, so that we can continue to, again, it's always about the student athlete well-being and the access to resources that you all need. So it's gonna look different come fall 2021, but I think it's gonna be an exciting time, and I'm hoping that maybe you'll jump on the board with us next year. And just kind of like a shameless plug, and I'm gonna do this is, you know, our applications are open until April 9th. So, you know, make sure you check the link in our bio on all of our social media. If you're interested in applying, again, we want to hear from the students. Like, this is your space to truly be a leader and make the change here in Maryland that will not only affect your time here, but also the time of the students that are coming behind you. So we got a lot of changes happening here. And as we kind of wrap up this episode, Ryan, what are you looking forward to next? You mentioned you're a junior, so what are the plans for your senior year? What are the plans for the summer? What you got going on?
Yeah, so kind of a little bit of an in between junior senior at the moment. I'm actually going to be graduating at the end of 2021 in December. I was able to fast track my degree, which was something that I wanted to do, which is really exciting for me. But yeah, I guess the future is a little bit unknown for me. I've been away for almost 5 years now, and I think I definitely want to return to my home in Sydney, at least for a year or so, just to be closer to my family and some of my friends. And it's been admittedly very tough during the pandemic. And I've also had some injury problems over the last few months. So I think I'll definitely head home over the summer and spend some time with friends and family and do that. And then beyond graduation, I'm really not sure. I'm still definitely very keen on playing soccer at the highest level that I can play at. But like I said, I've got other interests in finance, and I'm definitely interested in working in the business world upon graduation. Where that will be, I'm not sure, but yeah, I'm really excited to kind of explore the unknown and continue on my journey, which has been great so far.
I love that.
And
I love that you are really kind of leaving it open. Like, I think a lot of students feel like they need to have this plan once they graduate. But I think it's also an opportunity for you to kind of leave it open-ended, because you've done so much over the last 5 years, right? Like, you took advantage of everything you could. So whenever you're ready to jump into that job, whether it's, full-time soccer professional athlete, or, a full-time kind of 9 to 5 job, what we call it, you'll still have the skill sets either way, which I think is phenomenal for you.
yeah, I mean, so lucky, and I feel so grateful and fortunate to have had the experiences that I've had, and to be able to kind of, yeah, be able to feel free about what I'm going to do after college and really not have to worry about it. And I'm just trying to take advantage of that as much as I can, and yeah, really give myself the best opportunity to succeed in any endeavor that I choose.
All right.
So yeah, really excited about that. And for you, where do you see the evolution of Maryland, Maine going?
Well, I mean, the evolution is here, right? Like, we're sitting here having this conversation on a podcast, probably one of only a handful of student athlete development units across the country doing that. We just recently, in the last week, launched a webinar series called Athlete to Alumni, where we're bringing former student athletes from Maryland and to talk about what was that transition piece like that you're about to go through, right? From being a college athlete to the workforce, or being a college athlete and going to being a professional athlete. So we're really trying to think about, how do we give you all content that is in these short 30, 45-minute sound bites that you can listen to when you're on the road to a competition, that you don't necessarily have to be in person for all of the content that we want to provide for you all. So it really is thinking outside of the box from the traditional 7 p.m. programming, to really being able to reach you in the different spaces that y'all are at. Because in the past, it was like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday were the only days we could do programming, because typically y'all start traveling Thursday, Friday, depending on the sport, right? Now, Ryan, if you want to have a meeting and y'all are on the road on Friday, we can pull up on Zoom and have a 30-minute conversation about your career plans, and it not feel like it's taking away from anything. So I think we'll continue to think outside of the box in terms of how we can utilize media, social media, digital media, to provide you all content that is going to be purposeful for your growth and evolution while y'all are here with Maryland.
Right. Yeah. Well, I just want to add that I've only been here for 2 short years, but I can say for 100% certainty that Maryland Made has certainly evolved in that time span, and there's definitely been increased exposure to different programs on a day-to-day basis. And I think it's awesome that despite the pandemic, everything's still going as it would normally be in normal life. And I think you guys are doing a really fantastic job, and I'm sure it's only going to improve and continue to evolve over time. And I've got no doubt that it will, and it'll gain more traction among student athletes. And yeah, I'm excited for the program, and I'm excited to have done the things that I've done in Maryland Made.
Well, we are appreciative of students like you who kind of jumped in. You didn't know who we were, and you were willing to give us a chance. And we're hoping that more student athletes follow your footpaths. And so I'm going to thank you for being here today. Super excited to be able to have this conversation with you and kind of catch up and see what you've been doing through COVID, but even things that you were doing prior to COVID. Definitely one of the leaders of all of our student athletes. And I hope you continue that passion. So I'm signing us off here. Thank y'all for joining us for this conversation today. Again, I'm Resa Lovelace, and you are?
Ryan Blumberg.
And we are Maryland Made.